Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. As Donald Trump's reckless war with Iran stretches on indefinitely, the man is transparently desperate for a win, any kind of win in the Middle East. And to that end, he shocked the world this week by announcing a big nuclear agreement with, of all places, Saudi Arabia. Basically, under the terms of the deal, as we understand them, Saudi Arabia will be able to develop a civilian nuclear program, which does include enriching uranium, which can be weaponized, and in exchange, American companies will make billions by building the infrastructure for said program. That's basically the terms of the deal. Now, if you know anything about the art of Donald Trump's deal making, and at this point, don't we all, you're not going to be shocked to learn the deal is a lot less impressive than it looks. In fact, it seems to be already falling apart. Today, after the agreement was already signed, right? They announced the agreement's signed, there's pen and paper. Donald Trump is desperately trying to alter the terms via social media. Writing the agreement, quote, is totally subject to Saudi Arabia joining the very respected and successful Abraham Accords. In other words, normalizing relations with Israel. Now, the Saudis have long maintained that such a process would require Israel to recognize a Palestinian state, which Benjamin Netanyahu's extreme right-wing government has vowed will never happen. And that's even before Israel responded to the October 7th terror attacks by a mass campaign of death and destruction in Gaza that killed an estimated 15,000 children. So the Saudis are, I think it's fair to say, not pleased with the alteration to the deal they already made, announced the day after on social media. The entire thing might fall apart now. Who knows? Because of the slapdash way Donald Trump put the whole thing together. And now, basically, everyone is furious with him. And the Israelis are really furious because the deal left out the only part they care about, right? The Saudis are presumably not going to agree to join the Abraham Accords. The Middle East hawks here at home think the deal was too lenient in its safeguards against the Saudis possibly making a nuclear weapon since they're not going to be able to enrich uranium. And so now Trump's Secretary of State has to run defense for him.
Doesn't having a less than gold standard agreement in the Middle East run a risk?
Well, I'm not going to opine directly on that agreement. We're going to put out even when the moment is appropriate, we'll put out that in writing. We have to do it with Congress anyways, so we'll certainly do it publicly. But suffice it to say, the U.S. is not going to reach any agreement with any country in the world that leads to the risk of proliferation.
I mean, in point of fact here, Marco, the reason you're being asked about this is the president put out the announcement about the deal, right? Frankly, it's kind of beside the point. The Saudis have a mutual defense pact with Pakistan, which does quite famously have nuclear weapons. It's long been speculated the kingdom could simply acquire a nuclear weapon from them if it so desired. But the hawks are still angry. Everyone is angry. And so we were forced to ask the question, wait, where did this come from? Why did Donald Trump make this deal, announce this deal that everyone suddenly hates so much? And there's a few possibilities worth considering, which are illuminating to the broader context we find ourselves in. One is that he is completely flailing in the Middle East right now. I mean, hour to hour, minute to minute. The Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen are firing at Saudi tankers in the Red Sea across from the Strait of Hormuz. This is another shipping channel, which could lead to a wider regional conflict. It also means that oil can't get out of there. Iran, meanwhile, has kept the Strait of Hormuz shut. They've been firing on oil tankers. Passage through the strait is back down to the low levels it was during the hottest days of the war. Oil, in turn, has crossed $100 a barrel again. Gas prices then, as the dominoes fall, are back up well over $4 and still rising very, very quickly. I bet you've noticed this in the last few days. I sure have. Trump is also cratering in the polls. The last few days have seen some of his worst polling we've seen this year by far. He's responding by threatening war crimes constantly on the phone, on TV, on social media, which the populace, by the way, has no appetite for. And throughout all this, Fox is basically looking into the camera and begging him to end this war.
Well, I think the president's in kind of a tough spot here in that sense. And, you know, he promised to keep us out of endless wars or unsatisfactory wars. And now he's in one, and it's not at all clear how it's going to end. So he's vulnerable on this point. And I was in political terms, he does need to get this over with.
And with the midterm elections a little more than 100 days away, the clock is ticking for President Trump to get out of this war before voters head to the polls. It's making a lot of Republicans nervous. It's already, as we know, unpopular. According to the New Washington Post Ipsos polls, 69% of Americans disapprove of the handling of this conflict. Republicans cannot let this become an endless distraction, especially if they want to win in November.
Wrap it up, says Laura Ingraham. Let's get this show on the road. Okay, so one possibility is, given all that context, Trump's just desperate for a win, right? Like, oh, look at this. Look, I did something. Maybe he thought a deal with the Saudis would somehow give him a parachute to escape the political crisis of his own making he is currently trapped in. It's not exactly clear how he thought that would happen, but it would at least explain why he rushed into an agreement he is now desperately trying to get out of and renegotiate the terms of less than 24 hours after announcing. Of course, the other possible reason Donald Trump made this deal, and one we truly have to consider, is that there was a quid pro quo after all. It's just not the one that Israel wanted. After all, Donald Trump's family sure does make a lot of money from the Saudis. Remember when the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund gave Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner $2 billion out of the gate for his investment firm over objections from some of its advisors who on the board of the fund were like, this doesn't check out. Why are we doing this? And keep in mind, Jared Kushner is still gallivanting around the region with Trump's buddy Steve Witkoff, ostensibly trying to broker peace deals while also continuing to raise money for the fund. Meanwhile, the Trump organization has a $10 billion deal to develop a bunch of so-called luxury properties throughout Saudi Arabia, including in Riyadh and on the West Coast near the Red Sea. In fact, as Forbes reports, in 2024 alone, Trump and his family made an estimated $50 million just from their dealings with Saudi Arabia. Now, of course, Trump says he doesn't do any of this wheeling and dealing directly. This is all taken care of by someone else, and it has no impact on what he does as president. And you can decide if you think that's credible. Regardless, no one disputes his family benefits financially. No one's disputing or denying that. When you consider that context, it seems at least possible that Trump would want to cut the Saudis a pretty friendly deal. And again, it is not like this is unprecedented. We've just been through this right before the inauguration, right before. An official from the United Arab Emirates, just down the peninsula from Saudi Arabia, quietly struck a $500 million deal with the crypto company founded by the sons of Donald Trump and, oh, look at that, Steve Witkoff. Not long after, the Trump administration reversed course on a Biden-era policy and allowed the UAE to purchase and import high-end processing chips used for AI that had been banned before that they desperately wanted to get their hands on. The White House would like you to believe that was a coincidence. What I will say is that it sure looks like on multiple occasions now, the Trump family received a quid from a foreign government shortly before that country received a quo from us, the United States, via official policy. At the end of the day, we can't really say for certain if this deal was born of flailing incompetence or corruption or some combination of both or some other third thing. All we can say definitively is that every single decision this president makes, almost without fail, particularly in this region, is making everything worse.
Today, Brent crude oil, which helps determine the price of globally traded oil, closed at more than $100 a barrel for the first time since May, thanks to a war that is not only escalating, but widening. Take a look at the map you can see on your screen. This is published by the New York Times today, which shows how Iran is continuing to target U.S. military sites in the region and how it's really expanded over the last several weeks. Also today, Iranian-backed Houthi rebels attacked 2 Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea and threatened to shut down that key waterway, a move that would cause prices to skyrocket even higher. And consider already, even before that, where gas prices already are. Just take a look at some headlines from across the country. Here's one. Average gas price returns to $4 a gallon. Here's another one from Arizona. Gas prices jumped 37 cents in a week. And in Arkansas, gas prices jumped 24 cents. North Carolina gas prices climb. Drivers say they feel the pinch. Michigan gas prices up again, as well as in Texas and Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, Colorado, on and on and on, and probably wherever you are living as well. And right now, there are no signs that this war is going to end anytime soon. In fact, most of the signs we're seeing point to the opposite. Trump told Axios today that he is close to a decision on launching another massive attack on Iran. It does not take a rocket scientist to know that accelerating this war could send energy prices even higher than they already are. But exactly how bad can they get? And what would it take to see some relief? I think this is probably something you are all wondering. Thankfully, my next guest is a perfect person to ask about all of this. Joining me now is Amos Hochstein, one of the world's leading experts on energy security and diplomacy, who served in both the Biden and Obama administrations. It's good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Great to be back.
Okay, back in March, you were here. We were not even 1 month into the war, and we talked about the impact on oil and gas prices, and you said at the time we were experiencing the worst energy crisis the world has ever seen. How would you describe it now?
Getting worse. So look, I think that a large reason why we ended up in this bizarre MOU between Trump administration and Iran was because he finally realized what I was saying on TV and others were telling him. Look, if we continue the war at a steady pace, he was weeks away from getting to what's called tank bottoms, where you can't get more oil out or more gasoline out, and we're going to go towards crisis. He had weeks away from that catastrophic event. So he decided to do the MOU in a very hurried way, which you can tell by reading the MOU. It's a page and a half to end a war. And the problems that we're having right now in the war are resulting from how quickly that was drafted, because it has ambiguous language that the Iranians read one way, the U.S. reads a different way, and that's why we're back in this conflict now. But something even worse happened just in the last few weeks. Over the last several months, the Ukrainians have been successfully attacking the Russian oil infrastructure, their refineries. So now we have two wars that are colliding and coalescing in the worst way possible for oil markets, for gasoline, for diesel, for jet fuel. Russia was 11% of the diesel export market. They're at zero now. All of their refineries are basically up in flames. Today, just today, a few hours ago, Kazakhstan announced so much damage, they're stopping their exports through Russia. So it just gets compounded, and everything you've said, the Houthis have now come in. So March, April, May, we have a war that we have tools to answer. Now we're going back to war. Those tools, some of them still exist, some of them are gone. They don't exist anymore, and the ones that we have are diminishing. And we have another war that is combining with the Iran war.
And it's all about availability out there in the oil markets, as I've learned from you and many others from working together before. I think people watching have probably seen also, and you just referenced the Houthis. I talked about it earlier as well. I mean, and I referenced how the Houthi attacked some Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea today. There's also been this threat of traffic being cut off, not just in the Strait of Hormuz, of course, but also in the place in the Red Sea where ships also go through. What would the impact of that be if that is really brought to a halt?
So that is really bad, because what happens when we shut down the straits, the Saudis and the UAE are the only ones that have infrastructure to go around the around Iran or the Strait of Hormuz to the Red Sea. If you suddenly attack the Saudi ships where they did, in what's called the Bab el-Mandab crossing, and Yanbu, which is the area in Saudi Arabia where they load the ships, then you've taken the alternatives. So now you've taken millions of barrels that have been able to make themselves onto the market are now gone because that route. And two ships turned around, made a U-turn, turned around. And now even if they do go through, the risk premiums are high, so the insurance rates go up. If we're going to go 10 ships a day, we're now down to 2 because everybody's a little bit sluggish. Who pays the price for all of these things? Ultimately, the consumer. Because we can't get oil out, we can't get gasoline out or diesel. That's why we're already at $4.10 on average in the country. It's going up from here, and probably significantly. Some states had suspended their gas taxes, gasoline taxes, but they're supposed to come back now. So all the prices are now going back, and into this environment, the president has just said, we're going to go to a bigger war, a more expansive war. And the Houthis are saying, well, we're activated. So now we have the Houthis in the Red Sea, we have the Iranians on the Strait of Hormuz, and the Ukrainians attacking the Russian infrastructure. This is too much pressure for any of our tools to really work anymore. So consumers need to know, if you see a headline that Trump says we're going back to war, or they see a headlines we're striking again, go fill up your car. It's going to get much more expensive.
I'm going to speak for everybody watching right now who's hearing you say that. How high could it go? You referenced it kind of hitting a bottom. Are we close to that? What does that look like? And how high, if this continues another month, another 2 months, as you're projecting out, what does that look like in terms of gas prices?
It can't continue for another 2 months, because if you continue in this rate, the way we are right now for 2 months, our economy can't, the structures of our economy will fall apart, because the SPR is not endless.
The Strategic Petroleum
Reserve. It's going to go below 300 probably next week, 300 million barrels. It hasn't been that low in 40 years. We also took a lot out during the Russia-Ukraine, but never this low. Once it goes below 300 towards 250, the structure itself the integrity of the structure starts getting questioned, and how much you can take out gets lower. So it can continue. Prices will go up. We're probably on the march to $4.50. We're now at $4.10. If we keep going into war, we'll be at $5, and from there it goes up, and people will have to stop living their lives the way they were. Because remember, gasoline is important when we fill up our cars, but diesel is like the lubricant of the American economy. Mm-hmm. The food in your supermarket comes to the supermarket on a truck that's hauling it for a long time. All the products, all those Amazon delivery trucks that are arriving at your house, all that's on trucks. All that goes on diesel. When diesel prices go this high, it gets very expensive. And here's the other thing that happens. The Treasury notes, how we borrow money in the United States, are also climbing very fast over the last week or two. We're at really high levels. That means that the inflation rates go up. That means interest rates go up. Everybody's costs are going to go up, not just at your gas station, but in your supermarket and all the products that just before you think about going back to school, all the products you're going to buy, they're all going to cost more.
Amos, I don't know if you've calmed anyone, but you've certainly, well, that wasn't the goal. I think you've given people a really clear picture of what to expect and what they should prepare for as this war continues. Thank you so much for being here.
Or we don't go back to war.
Well, that's the hope, but we don't know how this is ending, and that's the big question. Thank you again.
Remember Greenwater Services, the company that got a no-bid contract to clean up the algae-filled reflecting pool? It turns out that wasn't the first no-bid government contract they're accused of botching. About a year earlier, Greenwater, owned by a longtime Trump supporter, received a $2.4 million, again, no-bid contract to treat a health-threatening sewage crisis in California's Tijuana River using its nanobubble technology. It did not go so well. About a month after they started the project, a storm flooded that river and washed away some of the company's equipment, which leaked diesel into the river. Oscar Romo, executive director of the conservation nonprofit Alter Terra, has been working on cleaning up that river for nearly 50 years. He shared these photos right here with The Moment, showing the equipment strewn across the cleanup site. Nothing got better, he told us. He actually argued it got a whole lot worse. Greenwater disputes Romo's account, telling The Moment just one trailer drifted downstream and was recovered. As for the diesel spill, which it appears you can see in one of Romo's photos, the company confirmed it, acknowledging a small spill in a report filed with the federal government, while also maintaining the experience-generated valuable scientific data. And the government appears to agree, arguing despite the need for significant modifications to that equipment, the project was a success. Does everyone agree? Well, a leading researcher, Dr. Kim Prather of the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, told us there just wasn't enough data collected to say that. In fact, she says she warned Greenwater that the Tijuana River was too volatile for those nano bubblers, for that technology. Greenwater didn't respond to her claims. Ultimately, she, along with other experts on that river, argued the project was not only reckless by Greenwater, but a waste of taxpayer money. Nevertheless, a year later, Greenwater was back, this time deploying their nanobubbles to the reflecting pool. Greenwater claims it worked over there, clearing the pool of algae. Today, however, the reflecting pool is empty, drained for yet another round of repairs.
I wish my name was Hunter Biden. I could go abroad, make millions off of my father's presidency. I'd be a really rich guy.
Do you think we couldn't find that? Don't sell yourself short, Don Jr. You've made billions. That was Donald Trump Jr. on with Sean Hannity, yucking it up back in 2019, perhaps manifesting being able to exploit his father's name for massive profits. New reporting in the New York Times shows just how massively Donald Trump Jr. has exploited his father's presidency for personal profit and gain. From that blockbuster New York Times report, quote, What sets apart the latest moves by Donald Trump Jr. is how he and his business partner, through their investment firm 1789 Capital, are cashing in on the policies of the current administration openly and without apology. Many of the companies that 1789 has invested in have large government contracts, while others, like Polymarket, have benefited directly from new Trump policies or rollbacks of existing laws. The firm bought shares in some of the most coveted private companies before many went public, often by leveraging their political and business connections to secure a stake or to help boost the company's sales. New York Times also reports this, quote, just 2 years ago, 1789 managed a few $100 million. It now oversees more than $3 billion. Its main investment fund generated returns of roughly 200% as of June 30th, according to a person familiar with the firm's performance. In the statement to the New York Times, Donald Trump Jr. said that as a private citizen, he's free to invest however he wants and is doing nothing illegal. And as Donald Trump and his administration asked Congress for billions more in defense spending for his deeply unpopular war with Iran, the Washington Post reports that the Trump brothers have invested in companies that stand to profit from exactly that spending. They write this, quote, Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump have amassed a portfolio of defense technology startups that are benefiting from new Pentagon priorities and spending. Funds linked to the Trump brothers have invested in more than a dozen defense tech companies and other firms seeking businesses from the Pentagon and federal agencies, a Washington Post analysis finds. Most of the investments have taken place since Donald Trump was elected president for a second time. The companies have collectively generated at least $3.2 billion in direct government business since the sons invested in an additional $3.1 billion in future contract options. Some have gained coveted spots on short lists of pre-approved contractors that can bid exclusively on up to nearly $200 billion in future work. Company representatives who responded to the Washington Post request for comment stated that the companies had secured their business with the federal government through rigorous Pentagon contracting processes. I want to bring in Norm Eisen. He's the co-founder and board member of Democracy Defenders Action and publisher of The Contrarian. Also joining us, political analyst and Bloomberg Opinion senior executive editor Tim O'Brien. Tim, I want to start with you. Were either the Trump sons successful investors before Donald Trump was president a second time?
You know, Nicole, there's this old Steve Martin joke, I think from like the 70s, that went, I'm going to teach you how to become a millionaire. Step one, find $1 million. And the Trumps have updated that basically to, I'm going to tell you how to become a billionaire, become president of the United States. And then your children can also share in the riches. Because the only reason that Donald Trump, his son-in-law Jared Kushner, and his two eldest sons are raking in the money like this is because Donald Trump sits in the Oval Office. There's absolutely no other reason for it. Donald Trump Jr.'s first job when he finished college was as a bartender, and then he went to work for his father. None of it involved investing or managing money at this scale with eye-popping returns that most professional managers who have a lifetime of experience and expertise and insight into financial markets and on and on and on could never match. And every excuse that the Trumps put up to explain this away, that somehow in Donald Trump's first administration, because they were so interested in public service, they bypassed being able to make money, so now they decided to make money, which is completely a bogus explanation for what they're doing, or that it's not illegal. Well, it isn't illegal, but it should be banned because they're doing this at the expense of the American people. They're doing it at the expense of our national security. They're doing it at the expense of our global reputation. And no one is constraining them, including and especially members of the Republican Party. So when Jim Jordan and Josh Hawley are busy chasing Jack Smith around the block with these shallow, baseless complaints that he is somehow ethically challenged, and they don't say a word about the multi-billion-dollar grift going on in the White House right in front of them, we're in a perilous time.
We can't be more mad, though, than Trump's own voter. And I wonder, Norm Eisen, you've been on these issues You've sort of been a moral player in the political arena for your whole career. How do you make people understand that he's robbing them? This isn't money that is zero sum. They're enriching themselves at the expense of the people who sent Donald Trump to Washington to make their lives better.
That's right, Nicole. And when you look at the sheer sums that are involved, the 1789 Capitol, it's like a natural experiment. When Trump came back into office, the Don Jr.'s firm was at about $200 million. Now it's got assets under management of over $3 billion. Is it just a coincidence that over this past year and a half, Don Jr.'s business acumen has suddenly exploded? I don't think so. Tim has levied a devastating indictment of the business capacities of the Trump children. I think that the sheer scale of the numbers here are starting to break through to the American people, that this is not what they put Donald Trump in office for. The president himself has made billions on crypto, while investors have lost almost twice that amount. So when you combine these scandals, and the numbers are scandalous, including Pentagon investments, direct investments in Trump family businesses by the government, when you combine them with the other corruption scandals we've covered, whether it's the Epstein files or the Trump slush fund or the Kennedy Center appropriating it for himself, Trump's own voters are getting the idea. Gee, maybe he's not in the Oval Office to help me. He is there to help himself and his family. And that's why you see Democrats ahead on the generic ballot. There was a poll today, 11%, Nicole. Trump's own base is contributing to that hemorrhaging.
Donald Trump is facing new backlash from the right as the Iran war spirals, the economy sputters, and the midterm elections loom. Today, Congress dealt Trump a new bipartisan rebuke over the Iran war. 4 Republicans in the House joined Democrats to pass a measure directing Trump to seek authorization for the war. The measure also got some GOP support in the Senate before ultimately stalling out. The price of oil is now back above $100 per barrel on average. Gas prices are now over $4 a gallon. Here's Republican Senator Rand Paul weighing in.
I think the Iran war has not been a success. I've been opposed to the Iran war from the beginning. I think by any objective measure, we're worse off than we were before the war.
Will there be backlash in November?
Probably.
That was Senator Rand Paul predicting some backlash in November. And right on cue, new polling today shows that Democrats hold an 11-point lead over Republicans when presented with a generic midterm ballot. Also today, Fox News is out with a poll that, according to the Daily Beast, is, quote, humiliating to the president. The poll shows that 76% call the president's economy fair or poor. Just 24% say it's excellent or good. And that's not all. Take a listen.
The president, who campaigned on the economy, now receiving negative marks on the issue, with 65% saying they disapprove of his performance.
Voters favored Democrats by 22 points on income inequality. Dems are up 21 points on health care. They're up 10 on inflation. They're also leading on the economy, foreign policy, government spending, even immigration.
And take a listen to Fox Business host Larry Kudlow, who served in Trump's first administration. He's here confronting a Republican senator.
Call it swag, swagger, riz, aura, or just plain messaging. But the GOP doesn't have it. You're bungling everything. Nothing is getting done. Your messaging is non-existent. You've lost your swag, your swagger, your riz, or whatever the young people say. No one knows what the heck you're doing, sir. They have no idea.
Joining me now is Molly Jong-Fast, contributing writer for The New York Times and MS Now political analyst and host of the Fast Politics podcast, and someone who is literally dripping in riz.
Oh. Wow. Okay.
I mean, it's got to be said. Has the Republican Party lost its riz? Are they no longer aura farming?
Let's just say that, by the way, Larry Kudlow doing a monologue that involves riz,
aura
farming. It's a much longer monologue than just the piece you played. And it is nothing I ever thought I would see Larry Kudlow say. And it's interesting to me because what the subtext of it is he's running cover for Trump, right? He's figuring out people to blame. And we've seen different machinations, sort of variations on this in Fox Business and Fox Regular. And it is all, when they start to deviate messaging-wise, when that starts happening, that's because things have spiraled out of control. And that's what we're watching right now.
So how bad is it? I mean, have they lost core elements of their base, or is this just sort of the standard kind of stuff that you can expect from a very unpopular war, a pretty bad economy, and the fact that the midterms were always a time that the Republicans were likely to take some losses?
Okay, so if you look at the 2018 midterms, that we had our, it was a D+8, and that was a shellacking for Trump. These, we're seeing polls. I mean, this D+11 poll may be an outlier because
that's the Democrats up by 11
right,
points.
That's the generic ballot for Democrats up by 11 points. But if that happens, it's game over for Republicans. I mean, 11 points is like a sweep to end all sweeps. Now,
is this the war?
I think, well, and I'm going to refer you to a Politico poll which was from yesterday, which 1 in 5 self-proclaimed MAGAs want the war to end today. They don't care how, they just want it done. And I think that's a pretty striking number. And I would think, there was another War Powers resolution today. Representative Jayapal, also Jason Crow was in there. I texted with him a little bit, talked to him about it. And, what I think is so interesting about these War Powers resolutions are, A, you had 4 Republicans vote with it. And B, these are post-Nixonian anti-corruption, right? This is from Vietnam. We have these War Powers Act because Congress was not supposed to lose its power like they did during Vietnam.
Wait, so we have Congress pushing back on this, so that's nice to see Congress off the couch. We also see voters weighing in here. So I want to take a listen to some sound from Trump voters in North Carolina who talked to MS Now about the war. Let's take a listen.
President Trump campaigned on no more foreign wars. You've obviously supported him.
3 times. 3 times. Very disappointed. My entire family is very disappointed.
You could talk directly to the president. We know he likes to watch TV. What would you tell him about this war?
President Trump, you shouldn't have got us in this war and was going to end it fast, soon, and now you're starting all over again.
This war has been it's been taxing on everyone. And I'm on a fixed income, and so it's other ones that are on fixed income I'm really feeling it.
How do the Democrats harness this all the way to November, if they can? Can they keep up this momentum?
So something that's working well for Democrats, I think, and a sign that voters sort of understand the gas prices are so tied to this war is that, Brent crude went to over $100 a barrel. Trump said, we're going to get a ceasefire. We're going to get a ceasefire. We're in a ceasefire. The war's over. It's, we have all these quotes of him saying the war's over. Crude went down. Gas prices went down. And then the ceasefire did not hold and gas prices went up. So it's very easy to make the connection between gas prices and the war. And remember, unlike other Republican presidents who have gotten us into war with the Middle East, he never made the story of why this war is happening keeps changing. Right. And that's another thing. And that goes back to this idea that when they get in trouble is when they can't all be in lockstep. Right. When the messaging starts to devolve into different strains. So I think That's what we're seeing here. Again, look, Democrats need to keep it together. They need to keep the coalition together. Like, you know, it's a big tent. They got to make sure everybody's in the tent. And that, you know, is not necessarily, you know, it could be problematic. And they need to run on one thing, affordability.